Hello, everyone. What a fantastic episode. Maria. I mean, David, I don't know what you thought. I can tell you what I thought, obviously. I'd say I went in with she wrote a book 50 over 50. She's in her 60s. Early 60s, by the way. She doesn't look it whatsoever. She's going to write a book 60 over 60. She's well traveled. If I say, coped with her childhood trauma, everything, and just became a new person at 50, right? Sober, etc., etc. So really good story, I thought. And then she's throwing a curveball and another curveball and another curveball. And I'm like, Jesus, this is just like reading a book. What an amazing life. I was absolutely fascinated.
I mean, yeah, it was the fact that sort of, and it's one of the things obviously you talk about a lot is the portfolio career, and
Yeah.
she was sort of the quintessential example of a portfolio career. Just the main difference being that her main career is that she's what sounds like quite a high-powered lawyer in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
She had a radio show for 6 years. She's written several books. Got sober at 50, was that?
50, yeah.
And yeah, it was just kind of like, oh wow, But I think it was the fact that I was like, all right, well, getting sober, then generally people do throw themselves into other things. But
She,
yeah, and sounds
full
like
of
she's
energy.
traveled the world.
Yeah. Full of energy. Great family. She disclosed a lot about her family, both sides, like kids and her upbringing. Brilliant, brilliant podcast. So can't wait. If I say can't wait, we just recorded it, so I can't wait to share it with all of you and enjoy.
Yeah,
Really.
enjoy, guys.
Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker Beluda and David Pawsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
So welcome to another episode of Man Up, Man Down, and we welcome Maria Leonhard Olsen onto the podcast. So Maria practices law in Washington, D.C. She's an author. It's a book called 50 After 50, Reframing the Next Chapter of Your Life. She's a podcaster, Becoming Your Best Version, a journalist, a TEDx speaker, turning life's challenges into a force for good, book marketing coach, and mentor to women in recovery. Her next books will be the DNA Test Surprise, What to Do Before and After You Open the Pandora's Box of Consumer DNA testing, and 60 After 60, Finding Serenity in Your 60s or at any age. Wow, so there's a lot in there already. I could come up with 5 or 6 questions, Maria, just straight on the back of a very short introduction. Maria, tell us more about you, and first of all, welcome to the podcast. We're delighted to have
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be on this podcast. I'm usually on women in midlife podcasts, so this is a little different.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
I mean,
we're still human.
Yes, I can see that. I love your podcast. I've listened to some episodes and you really have a wide range of guests and it's really well done. So thank you for having me. But to answer your
Thank you very
question,
much.
yes, I'm someone who has an iron in many different fires. I'm someone who's very high energy and likes to keep on growing and learning. And so I started my own podcast 5 years ago called Becoming Your Best Version, in which I interview women who have inspired me and I ask them the following question: what do you do to become your best version? And so it's kind of a selfish endeavor in that I'm collecting great ways to uplevel my life every week. And seldom do people give the same response to that question. So it's really been an enriching part of my days. I make my money as a civil litigation attorney in Washington, D.C., but I can't say that's my passion. It pays well and it fuels the rest of my life. I'm also an avid traveler, and I think one of the gifts of the pandemic was that there are more it's more acceptable to do your job remotely. So I did a hearing once from Machu Picchu, and the judge didn't know where I was. So I have traveled to 70 countries, and I'm trying to get to every country in the world eventually. So, the other things that you mentioned that I'm involved in is I write books, I write articles. I am 12 years sober, and so I reach my hand out to help other women who are trying to get sober. And because I have published 6 books, and some are self-published, some are traditionally published, and one is a hybrid published book, I learned that most authors don't want to market their books. They want to just write. And so I learned how to do it myself. Hiring a publisher is very expensive. And so what I do is try to help women learn how to do the marketing themselves. So that's another thing that I do. I think that covers it all. I'm the mother of two adult children. My daughter is a social worker who's getting her master's degree at University of Toronto and lives in Chicago. And my son is actually a famous social media influencer with more than 20 million followers. I'm
Wow.
not kidding.
Wow.
And he rose to fame during the pandemic. His name is Chris Olsen. If you wish to look at his material, he's super funny. If you have teenagers, they may likely know who he is because he's been on tour with Megan Trainor. He had his own tour. He's a singer, dancer, and actor as well. And I'm really proud of him. He really made it happen for himself and now does social media for other stars,
Whoa.
including um, Kris Jenner and Harry Styles.
Wow.
So he's big, big, big.
We should get him on the podcast to help us with increasing our followership, I think.
Good luck with that. I can't get him to do very much. He's
Fantastic. I mean, I have to say that's a different generation, isn't it?
oh, yeah. I
Oh,
mean, he's 27 years old and living his best life, and
yeah.
I just follow along.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
That's a great introduction. It seems like you have obviously a lot on your plate. Um, so and if I say I'm not going to ask because you wrote a book 50 over 50 and you're writing 60 over 60. So I'm not going to ask you for your age.
Oh, I don't mind at all because I look good for my age. I look good. Period. I I'm 61 now, and I'm half Filipino, and oftentimes we say Asians don't raisin. Like, I don't have wrinkles, and I know a lot of my friends from childhood who I envied as a teenager, they're getting Botox. That's not something that I'm going to do.
Brilliant. To be honest, I've probably got Botox before you do, and I'm a lot younger, so you definitely looking younger than I feel. So what if I say what was the catalyst that led to you writing these books?
Oh my
And
gosh. Well, that is a big story. My life fell apart when I turned 50.
right,
I was a raging alcoholic. I drank myself out of a 25-year marriage. I was an at-home mom at the time and felt really rudderless when my then husband asked me to leave. I had to start over. I had taken 15 years off from practicing law. I had done some volunteer law work, but I had to take another bar exam. I moved to the Bay, south of Annapolis, Maryland, about an hour from DC, and I basically started over. And when you get sober, the common um, not well, common admonition is to not go back to the people, places, and things that help to foster you going off the rails. So I really had to separate myself from my old life. And I was also an empty nester and living alone for the first time in my life at age 50. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I decided as a gift to myself for my 50th birthday, I would try 50 new things to determine how I wanted to live the next chapter. And those things were big and small, like small social activities and lifestyle changes, but big adventures. Like I moved to Nepal and lived in the Himalayas for 2 months, volunteering at a school that was in the poorest region of Nepal. And that became an exercise in cultivating gratitude for me, for all the things I took for granted just because I was lucky enough to live in the US and thereby always having access to medical care, clean water, food, a lot of things that we in developed nations take for granted that those in developing nations have to struggle for every day. So that really reset my life and put me on a path of living in an attitude of gratitude and acknowledging the many privileges that I have that aren't just living in a developed country, but being abled. Like I'm not in a wheelchair. I can hike. I can move. I I have enough money to do pretty much whatever I want. I'm good at budget travel. I'm educated. There are so many things that we take for granted. And this, I don't mean for this to sound like a lack of humility, but those of us who are um, average or above average or pleasant to look at, that is a privilege. Like
Yeah.
there are studies of people who put on fat suits and go out to stores and don't get waited on or don't get treated well. Our society has a bias towards people who are are pleasant to look at. And that's something that sounds weird to acknowledge, but I've seen it. Like if I dress up and go to a store, I get better service than if I go in wearing sweatpants and not looking put together. So there are a lot of things that I no longer take for granted.
So, sort of how soon after you got sober was it that you went to Nepal?
Oh, months after.
Right.
And yeah.
Because I mean, you know, we've interviewed a lot of people that have, you know, struggled with alcohol and drugs on this podcast. And, you know, the gratitude is sort of a very common theme. And, you know, I guess, well, part of that is through the 12 steps program. But yeah, you know, it's almost like after a year or 2 years that, you know, those sort of feelings start to manifest from, you know, as I say, I'm only speaking from sort of, you know, the people we've interviewed. So it's yeah, quite amazing that, yeah, you sort of started. I mean, had you, even when you were drinking, did you sort of ever have moments of gratitude?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, having my children were probably the best things that ever happened to me. And my heart just burst with love and gratitude at that time. But it really started when they became teenagers, and our job is to give them wings, but it hurts when they push you away. And when my kids became teenagers and I had given up a lucrative law career, I felt really sad about it. And I felt that no one was grateful for the sacrifices that I made. And I know that that is a big ego trip kind of thing to do. But you mentioned the 12 steps, which I believe are a good, solid guide for being a good human. And those things, in a nutshell, are about believing in something bigger than yourself, taking inventory of your character defects and working to remedy them, and paying it forward, helping other struggling people, not necessarily just other alcoholics. So, yeah, the 12 steps really reframed my life. I felt I came from a pretty rough upbringing. My father was a raging and violent alcoholic. My parents were divorced. They got excommunicated from the Catholic Church, which was the way in the 1960s. And so my mother left us with my father, and I didn't feel like I had really strong role models as a child or teenager. And so I felt like getting sober was really a rebirth, learning of how to adult in a different way. And while I believe I was an excellent mother of small children, when they became teenagers, and I could see where they were headed, and I could see the dangers that lie ahead, and I wanted to protect them, which you can't. You can't follow your teenagers around. That bred resentment. And so I really had to learn how to become more of an advisor when asked, rather than the kind of parenting that I knew how to do. And I didn't know really how to sit back and let them make their own mistakes. It was too painful for me to watch. And my son is also an alcoholic and got really into drugs. And we had to do an intervention and send him to rehab, which was so painful. But it also gave him a new life. And he wouldn't be the success he is today had he not gotten sober.
So, I mean, how old were your children when you got sober?
13 and 16, I think.
Right. And I mean, you sort of said it was when your husband asked you to leave, that sort of when you got sober.
Yeah.
I mean, what we, I mean, I think, an alcoholic state of mind is, you think you are hiding it a lot of the time. I mean, were they aware of how bad things were and how bad had things got, if you don't mind me asking?
Husband was aware. He started finding bottles all over the house. He started looking at my emails and really paying attention to what I did every day. And I started drinking before noon, and he noticed. My children, teenagers are very full of ego. They were really focused on themselves, not so much us. I mean, we noticed that we were fighting, and they knew that I started going to AA meetings, and my husband sent me to rehab, and so they came to visit me there. And I was very stubborn. I went to 5 rehabs. Really took me about a year to get sober. And there was sexual abuse in my childhood, sexual assault that I hadn't dealt with. And so I also went to a rehab for people who had sexual trauma. And that was also very important to my healing because I like to pretend that these things never happened. And in the US at least, the statistics are 1 in 4 American women and 1 in 6 American men will have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And those are just reported
Mm.
assaults. And so it's a very huge problem. And it was like holding a beach ball underwater. I pretended these things didn't happen. But when triggered, the trauma would arise. I would lash out at people for no apparent reason, and not because it was their fault, but I would be triggered by things because I didn't process how what happened to me was still affecting me as an adult.
Mm.
Yeah, so I would really admonish people, if you have childhood trauma or any trauma at all, really find a way to process it in a healthy way. Otherwise, it's going to continue to plague you in subconscious and conscious ways.
I mean, as a therapist, I work with a lot of predominantly middle-aged men,
Hmm.
right? Do, I don't know if you have a theory around that, but I find, and that includes me, you get to midlife and you start thinking about these, as I say, childhood traumas and things, that influence why you're doing certain things. Why, I mean, logically, why don't we do it when we're 18 or 20, right? And solve all that early in our life and then just live our life free of that,
Yeah.
one life.
I think that there needs to be more education about the utility of therapy. I think that there's still a little bit of a stigma around that, especially around for the older generation and for men who are socialized to believe that they have to be the strength, the anchor, and that leads to a lot of people not seeking help that could very much benefit them. I think that it's really useful to find out from a prospective partner what their childhood traumas were and if they've dealt with them. Because I believe that my ex-husband still hasn't dealt with his childhood trauma. I he and probably most of the people who know us believe that it was all me that led to the demise of my marriage. But that is simply not true. And I'm not going to tell my kids about any of this because I think it would just be a burden to them and it's not their problem. but everyone has something that needs to be dealt with, whether it was loneliness or rejection or not feeling nurtured by your parent. There are so many big T and little t traumas that continue to affect us if not acknowledged and processed in a healthy way. For me, in my continuing healing journey, somatic healing became a huge, huge part of dealing with my traumas. That somatic healing, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, has to do with where trauma is stored in your body. And I wasn't aware that there was still trauma stored in my body. And I found a somatic healer who came onto my podcast as a guest, and I really wanted to work with her. And it was a new level of awareness of things that were still bothering me. Like I had 3 miscarriages, uh, 2 before I had children and 1 in between my children, and I thought, "Well, I've dealt with that." But that came up during the breath work and the meditation, that was still a big sorrow in my life that I really just got on with without acknowledging that how much grief I still had about those things.
I mean, it's, you like Volker's question, why don't we deal with it when we're 18? And, and you use the great phrase, big T's and little T's. And so I know for a start that, a common sort of symptom of trauma is to downplay that trauma. It is like, oh, well, you dismiss it. It's like, well, actually, I know someone that went through something a lot worse. So what I experienced in childhood, isn't that bad. But also you don't know what a normal upbringing is, do you? Until you get older and you sort of learn from other people. It's like, oh wow, actually, yeah, perhaps what I went through isn't normal. And
Yes.
so yeah, I think it's and yeah, I think it is when you get to this age that you do, your children are growing up, and I think you are very conscious of not, protecting them from some of the things that you went through. And while you may not have gone through the same things, you want to equip them with the tools to deal with the things that are going to happen to them in life.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I agree wholeheartedly with that. We want to protect our kids, but a therapist told me something that blew me away, that if I keep protecting them, I save them from the opportunity or prevent the opportunity for them to learn from their mistakes, that this is really their path, and I should not deprive them of the dignity of making their own mistakes. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't agree with it at the time, but I came to agree with it, that you don't grow unless you learn from your mistakes, that I had to set them free. And I actually got a tattoo on my wrist that is from an Irish poet. It is love is proved in the letting go. And that was
Mm.
a hard lesson for me. But I had to let go of my children, especially as adults and even as teenagers. I had to allow them to make some mistakes. And while my sons were potentially fatal, we had to step in and do an intervention. We had to let him make a lot of mistakes. And the field that he's in, social media influencing and acting, is brutal, and drugs and alcohol are rampant. But I have to just pray and send him good energy and hope that what he has learned will sustain him and keep him from going off grid again or off the path.
And how's he doing?
Good. He has 7 years of sobriety, and talking about his path to sobriety is part of his platform. And I know he helps a lot of people by doing that. And he also talks about therapy. He's still in therapy and has helped a lot of young people pursue the path of therapy. So I'm really, really proud of him and his continued healing journey.
Hello, folks. It's Volker here. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. As you know, I coach executives, whether that is for leadership skills or sales leadership skills or working as a therapist too. There are few ways I can help you to get unstuck, improve your work-life balance, or become a better version of yourself. So you will be more productive and have more time for your family. Whatever it is, you can join my client list of people from General Electric, Pepsi, DHL, Boots, and many others. Book a free exploratory call via my website, www.obnat.us. That's OBNAT.us. Now back to the show.
I mean, you touched on a good point there. Do you think that sort of younger generations are a lot more sort of in tune? And I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and basically it was sort of talking about how, well, a lot of the things that we talk about is like, oh, well, you should, speak to your parents and find out about their childhood and their upbringing and understanding. And, and it was sort of saying about, well, actually, my kids are kind of getting sick of me being so, like, this is what the podcaster was saying, my kids are getting sick of me being so open. So is that going to also, then sort of result in a generation that are a lot more, buttoned up and I can't think of the phrase, but,
Yeah.
keep their emotions in. But sorry, Volker, I think I interrupted something you were about to say.
Good.
No, I think that could very well be a result of us oversharing. And my part of the 12 steps is making amends to those who may have harmed. And I wanted to make a verbal amends to my kids, but they didn't want to hear it. So I have to live my amends to my children. I think at base, our children just want their parents to be happy and stable. And so I'm not going to share more with them. I mean, if they want to know, I'm pretty public about my healing journey. They could read my books. They don't want to. They could listen to my podcasts. I even had a radio show in DC about LGBT issues, and I did that to learn more about LGBT issues because my son is gay. And he never once listened to my radio show, which I had for like 6 years. And he never listened. My daughter listened, and I learned a lot about LGBT issues. And I became an ally and love going to pride events and helping people. But they just don't want to hear it. So
Yeah.
I think that while they're on their own healing paths, they do not have the capacity to really take on so much of or know so much about their parents. And I feel like after our kids have children, that changes and they want to know more. Or when we get even more elderly, they want to make sure that they have family stories and so I think that will change, but when they're young adults and teenagers, I don't think they wanna know. They're just too full of themselves, and that's developmentally appropriate.
If I say I hear you, to be honest, when I was younger, I didn't listen to my parents, did I? I mean,
No.
not that my parents had podcasts or, social media was around, right? But, my kids, I think my son actually listened to some of my podcasts when I first started. It was quite funny, but he was 9 or 10, right? He was really young. Um, and obviously this podcast, they're not the target audience. They're not bothered. They don't care. Listening to middle-aged people, right? But it's the same with giving them advice. I mean, my son just finished school today, GCSEs, and obviously big day. And, I could sit there and go like, be careful, whatever you do tonight, don't drink, they need to make their own experience, right? And they need to learn. And, when you pick them up and they're drunk or they misbehaved, you just laugh. And you go like, if I since they don't listen, I always say at least I was a lot worse at their age. So I know David as well. Like, you were a lot worse than you. So it's just part of growing up, right? I think.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, it's like a roulette wheel. Which of our kids is going to die in a drunken accident? It's scary. Being a parent is a very
Yeah,
scary thing. And a lot of it is luck. I mean, how many times was I in a car driving or being driven by someone drunk?
yeah,
Lots. How many times was I in some club with shady characters? Unfortunately, a lot. You know, there were a lot of places that I went, and I'm sorry to say, substances that I tried that I had no
Yeah.
business trying. That was not advisable.
Yeah.
And especially as a woman, we're very vulnerable to sexual assault, and that happened to me when I was drunk. So bad things can happen to anyone, anyone. And so, but for the grace of our higher powers, go us and our children.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
I think you're spot on. I mean, that we need to let them learn. We learned, but yeah, it
Yeah.
is sometimes it is potluck, right?
Yes.
Which car you get in, which club you go into, and
Yeah.
maybe we just been
Ah,
lucky, but it's also a little bit, if I say, common sense sometimes, right? To
sure.
it's
Sure.
it's it's that balance.
Well, one thing you don't have to deal with in Europe is we've got such a huge gun problem here. And one of my friends, 20-year-olds was killed while driving a car, just stopped at a traffic light because there was a gang war that broke out around him. And so guns have really increased the danger in the US.
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
we luckily don't have that. I mean, we have increased knife crime now, but yeah,
Mm.
hopefully no guns. Well,
Yeah. Are you both in London?
Yeah, pretty much. We're both south of London, basically, but we're in commuting distance to London. So I'm based in just north of Brighton, and David, you can answer yourself.
Well, yeah. I mean, have you been to the UK? I mean, you obviously said you've travelled a lot. I'm quite near Gatwick, so I don't know if you know where Gatwick Airport.
Yes. Yes. And Volker, where are you from originally?
Germany.
Ah, yeah.
But,
I should have guessed. Yeah.
yeah, but you never know. I moved here 2001, so I feel more British than I feel German now. I lived longer in the UK than I ever lived in Germany. So
For you. Yes, I very much love London, and, my son goes there often, and he
yeah,
went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts for a summer, and, it's just wonderful.
yeah.
So many offerings, yeah.
They have a great leadership program, actually.
Mm, good, good, yeah, I'll be coming through there again. One of my best friend from childhood moved to the countryside north of London, so I'll be coming through there, as far as travel goes, this summer I'm going to Sri Lanka and the Maldives. So
I'm
I
in.
really, really love travel, and Heathrow is such a common stopping over
Yeah,
point. So I'll probably draw that out and stay for a bit.
yeah. Let us know when you come over.
Okay.
We do an in live meeting,
Okay.
in live podcast. We do take two.
Great. Yeah, that would be fun.
It's something that you mentioned. I mean, I have to say, Maria, you are just fascinating. Like you know, I could talk to you for hours. And I mean, so you just sort of talking about your radio show for the LGBTQ community. I mean, how is things for that community at the moment under the current administration? I mean, there's a lot going on. Um, we sort of hear different stories. I've got friends in the US, and sometimes you think, well, are they over over egging the message, or I mean, I saw a horrible Facebook post about someone being beaten yesterday. I mean, how bad are things?
Well, I think they're bad, and it was particularly scary in the first Trump administration because, um, his vice president wanted to send people to, camps to be re-educated if they were gay, and so that was extremely scary for my son, he called me in tears the day of that election. But there's so much more. He's cutting back on funding for social programs, not just for the LGBT community, but for the elderly. And Trump is terrible, terrible for our country. It's embarrassing for me to have him as our president. And so, yeah, there is increased fear. about him, and he empowers the far right, and he emboldens people who are ultra Christian, and so yeah, that can lead to some increased violence. So at the same time, I think that it is mobilizing those of us who want to be allies to marginalized communities. So there are increased efforts, and unfortunately, President Trump is putting more conservative judges into high courts, so that's also having an impact. But all is not lost. I mean, there are plenty of allies and people who will stand up to the current administration. I think immigrants are really taking the brunt of his harmful attention right now, and that's really scary to me. But yeah, I think that this is temporary, and that cooler heads will prevail ultimately. We just have to endure the next 3 years, in my opinion. Yeah.
I mean, David, you started the discussion of politics. I don't even want to,
Well, I mean,
yeah, I
no, but
don't want to get involved, but I watch it with fear, to be honest. I mean, your new vice president, I mean, the president, we're kind of used to him now a little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, just what he did to the economy early on this year. I mean, I mean, now we got started. So as I say, don't get me started, but I mean, I think I said it today. I read it today. He took on this new Air Force One from Qatar, right? Qatar is. I mean, just small things like that where you go like, sorry, is there no common sense in that, man?
Well, I think it's another illustration of his enormous ego, and that is something that fuels so many of his actions. But I'm going to make a pivot here because talking about politics reminds me of my biological father, who I discovered when I was in my 50s. You mentioned earlier that I'm writing a book about DNA test discoveries, and
Yeah.
this it's fascinating to most people who hear my story that I was speaking at a diversity conference, and 23andMe was the corporate sponsor. So they gave me a free DNA test. And even though my mother is from the most Catholic country on the planet, and my father, who raised me, is Irish English Catholic,
Oh,
I found out that I'm half Ashkenazi Jew, and there are no Filipino Jews. If you ever meet someone who is genetically half Filipino and half Jewish, please call me, because I've been looking for 7 years, and there are converts, a few, a handful, but there just aren't any. So, it took me a year to find my biological father, but he turned out to be an actor I've watched on the big and small screen throughout my childhood. Yeah. And so, he was very political, and the first thing he ever asked me when we got on the phone for the very first time, and he said, "I have a question to ask you, and if you answer this question in the wrong way, we cannot have a relationship." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "Did you vote for Trump?" I
wow.
said, "No." And he said, "Okay, all right, we can have a relationship." So, he also thought that because I live in Washington, D.C., that I had my finger on the pulse of all things political. So, every time we spoke on the phone, he wanted to talk about politics and my take on things, and he had a lot of initiatives he wanted me to start. He thought I had a lot of power here because I live here. Just wasn't true. But still, he was, oh my gosh, such an ardent Democrat, and, he died in November, and I'm very sad about that because meeting him made my a lot of my life make sense because we're so much alike temperamentally.
I mean, that was going to be my next question. Did that
Yeah.
sort of fill in a lot of blanks? I mean,
Yeah.
like, well, when you sort of mentioned about, him being an actor, I was going to say, well, is that where Chris sort of, I mean, had prior to Chris, had there been anyone in the family that you knew of? Right. Yeah.
No. No, and so, yes, I think so, and my son, got to meet him a few times, and My father told him all kinds of stories about old Hollywood. He knew a lot of the greats. He was in the movie Spartacus with Kirk Douglas and knew him personally. And so he regaled us with stories about old Hollywood. My son didn't know a lot of the names, and I was kicking him under the table, like, just pretend you know, because these were big names. He was in a movie with Barbara Streisand and Sally Field, and my son didn't know who any of these people were, but I implored him to pretend. So, yeah, my, biological father, was so gregarious and well-read and well-traveled and so different from the dad who raised me, and I feel very privileged that I got to meet him, and, now his family, his extended family, has become family to me,
So did
and,
he
well
not know about you then?
no, he
Right.
didn't know about
Yeah.
me. I was the product of a one-night stand my mother had. On her way back to the Philippines, she stopped in Seattle for a few days to visit her cousin who was in university there, and they went to a party, and they met, and one night stand, and I was conceived. So, he had
Blimey.
no other children of which he was aware. I
Oh,
mean, it's conceivable I could have more siblings, maybe. But he didn't know of any, and, he didn't even remember my mother, which irked me, but he didn't. And, I thought often kind of wistfully, like, what if my mom had chosen him instead of my father? Because she was pregnant and an immigrant, and she wanted to get married fast to anyone, and she could have chosen him, but she didn't. And, things could have been really different for me. I don't know how they would have been, and I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I had. But my biological father was such a fun person to know, and, I grew to love him in the 7 or 8 years that we knew each other, and weirdly, I, even share some physical characteristics as him, like, we both have these weird dimples down here, and we both have the same shaped eyes, the same nose, the same tooth out of place, so it was really a blessing for me to get to know him, and so the big DNA testing companies like Ancestry and 23andMe, they do not publicize how many people find out about siblings or parents that they didn't know about. So, the book that I've written that is being published by Bloomsbury, which is actually a UK-based publisher, is about all the things you should consider before and after you take a test. Because my DNA is in the system, I have unwittingly become a potential DNA informant on anyone in my bloodline, even a couple generations hence. Because once your DNA is in the system, the police can get a subpoena and test your DNA against others. And that's how they found a lot of murderers in our country. Like the Golden Gate Killer was found through putting together a family tree of DNA. And in the UK, it's even worse because police are allowed to take your DNA when you're arrested, not even convicted.
Ah,
The law is more lax in the UK.
I think 23andMe are going through a lawsuit for a data breach at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, and a bankruptcy. They're being bought by another company, so they're not going to go under. But yeah, that's another thing I wrote about in my book, that your privacy is an illusion once the internet has your information. But DNA is arguably an even further intrusion on your privacy because if I were to apply for life insurance right now, for instance, a common question from the insurer would be, have you ever taken a DNA test? And I can't lie or I can be denied benefits. Then, because I am half Ashkenazi Jew, a question would be, did you test positive for BRCA, the breast cancer gene? And the answer for me, gratefully, is no, but for many people, the answer is yes, and then I can be denied life insurance. That's legal.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, I'm sort of looking at the time. We've got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, yeah, sort of when you've got that on one hand and AI and we are at, well, we're at that sort of tipping point of science fiction of, a lot of the films that we were watching in the 90s. It's kind of like, oh gosh, we've sleptwalked, and it's happened organically. We've given up our sort of privacy rather than it sort of, suddenly being taken from us. It's, when you get a new phone or, and you're like, yeah, I agreed to those terms and conditions, but you don't actually read what you're agreeing to. You just want to
Yes,
set up your new
Yeah.
phone.
true. Very true. Yeah.
So maybe to finish the podcast, and I believe it's a question you asked on your podcast, right? You ask guests how they become the best version of themselves.
Sure. That's fair.
Maybe that's a good question to if I say unfortunately finish it off. I think there's so much more we could talk about. I mean, David is absolutely right. So next time you're in Heathrow, let's
Yeah.
let's connect.
Yeah. I am happy to come back on this podcast. It's fun. But to answer your question, I would say the top two would be to surround myself with people who bring out the best in me, who encourage me, who support me, who inspire me. And secondly, to be very intentional about how I spend my time. I have learned how to say no to more things and yes to me, because I am a recovering people pleaser. And so I really need to pay attention to how I spend my time. And actuarially speaking, at age 61, I'm in the third of my life. And so I know I have more life behind me than I have ahead of me. So I don't waste time anymore. I don't do things just to please someone else. I don't do things unless it aligns with my purpose and who I want to be. And I have cut energy vampires out of my life. I mean, some of those people are in my family, so I can't do it completely. But I limit my time with people who are just draining me of energy and not elevating my life in any way. So those are the top two for me. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, I'm not going to ask any more questions. We'll be here for another couple of hours. But I mean, obviously you've got your TED Talks, you've got your books. I mean, where's the best place to find out about everything you do, Maria?
Well, my name is MariaLeonhardOlsen.com is my website, and there are links to everything there. And so, yeah, I would love to talk further. And I love being on podcasts and public speaking. I'd be willing to come to the UK to do any public speaking gigs, because what it does for me is reinforce all of the work that I've done, is to keep talking about it so I won't forget or grow complacent.
I mean, and sorry, one last thing I've got to say is, what you said about the people you surround yourself with. I mean, and we talked about gratitude. I mean, that's something that I'm grateful for, is that every Friday for the last couple of years, we've sat down and spoken to someone that's got some, got incredible life experience. And yeah, I feel like I'm a better person for it. Thanks so much for your time. This has been a delight. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you
was
so
fantastic. Thank
much.
you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com, or podcast@manupdown.com, with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.